and the newly unveiled HTC U12 Plus. Now, this is obviously HTC's new flagship. The company isn't planning on producing a secondary flagship later in the year, like last year with the U11 and the U11 Plus. They're just having this one phone, so there's no U12, it's just the U12 Plus, and that is going to be the phone that takes them through the whole of 2018 by the sounds of it. I might be wrong, they might change their minds down the line, but so far that's what we know. So this is the phone that's going to have to fight off everything following, but it already has a whole host of hot competition, including the likes of this, Samsung's S9 Plus, which launched earlier this year. They already have a whole host of stuff on this and the smaller S9. You should check that out on the channel if you haven't already, and hit the subscribe button and the bell. You'll be the first to know when we post more on the U12 Plus too. But there are a few obvious similarities and differences here that I want to take you through, so you know exactly which one might give you the edge that you're looking for if you're in the market for a new flagship blower. Now let's start on the software experience and the front of these devices. So both phones feature, if I can just unlock them, both phones feature elongated displays. Obviously this is something that Samsung brought in with the S8 family last year, and HTC embraced at the very start of 2018 with the U11 Plus. So on the U12 Plus here we have an 18:9 aspect ratio WQHD Plus, I guess, display you can call it. It's a super LCD 6-panel with a 2960 by 1440 resolution. It does support HDR in certain situations, for instance YouTube at launch, and they're planning on adding more app support down the line, so hopefully we can expect things like Netflix and HDR later on. The Galaxy S9 Plus meanwhile features a 6.2 inch panel, this is a 6-inch panel I should say, with an 18.5:9 aspect ratio and that same 2690 by 1440 resolution. It uses an AMOLED panel, Super AMOLED, Samsung's tried and true tech. Right now the screen tech, the similarities, in terms of the differences in quality are slimmer now arguably than they've ever been, but the Samsung definitely has a distinct amount more punch and brightness overall, I'd say. It actually wins out, which is surprising. I think LCDs in the past on IPS panels like the ones used by HTC have typically been very bright, so this is at full brightness right now, and I can definitely see more coming out of the Samsung there. Also, whilst we're here, the elongated display means the interface is slightly different. So you have full on-screen buttons for all your navigation. These are both running Android 8.0 Oreo out the gate, but the HTC has been confirmed Android P update will come very soon, and I'm sure Samsung is working on the same for the S9 Plus too. Samsung's actually got a haptic home button here, like with the S8 family, so you can press it and it vibrates and gives you haptic feedback. Samsung, excuse me, HTC has done something similar, but in their own distinct way. So the big kind of hook with interaction with the U family is the EdgeSense, squeezable EdgeSense. So you can squeeze it and you can activate different features depending on what you've got set up. So I think, if I can find where the sensors are, they're down here. So if you squeeze it right now, by default, this one opens the camera. This is EdgeSense 2. This is the first phone with EdgeSense 2. So you can also do some things like, if I know where to do it, I never do. If you tap it, you can actually add in some extra functionality, things like Edge Launcher. You couldn't tap on previous versions of EdgeSense, they didn't have that level of sensitivity. But also the buttons on the side they look like hardware controls, so your power and your volume rocker here. But these are actually now solid state buttons, like on the iPhone's home button, for example. So they vibrate, they depress, they feel like they're depressed, but they're actually just vibrating with a haptic motor inside the phone. This is so HTC can guarantee even more reliable durability. This phone is IP68 certified, which is great to know, as is the Galaxy S9 Plus. This phone does have physical buttons that depress, so you've got the power button here, you've got your volume rocker on the left side, and you have the Bixby key, which is the company's virtual assistant. It is useful in certain situations, but most people I know don't really use it, and there's definitely some bugs and stuff going on here too, despite this being a full release version of the phone, which is quite strange. What HTC has done is you do have both the Google Assistant and Alexa in certain markets, and you can actually pair those to the EdgeSense gesture, so you can press and hold, or squeeze and hold I should say, or just squeeze to summon one and then the other. The phone will also support dual wake words, so you can actually say Alexa or OK Google and summon it that way too, which I don't think you can do. You can have the Google wake word with this, but there's no Alexa support, so you just have the option of Google or Bixby, and Bixby typically doesn't impress quite as much as I think Alexa does with its home automation integration and the like. The screens as well, you'll notice, unlike a lot of other phones coming out right now, there is no notch here. Samsung has continued its trend, so it's gone for rounded corners, which look really, really nice. I quite like having a continuous bezel. I'm not too fond of a notch. I don't mind it, but I think if it means that it's a more seamless look, I think that's actually for the better. There's a single 8 megapixel front-facing camera there. There's also an infrared emitter, which you can use for the face unlock. It easily uses iris recognition, or you can have the hybrid recognition, which I covered in my unboxing and first look of this phone, so you do have that option here. The HTC does also feature a face unlock of its own, but it uses these new dual cameras, so you have no infrared sensor here. It's just based on light, and this phone will actually brighten its screen up at night if you're trying to use face unlock in dark environments. But you have two 8 megapixel sensors here. They give you depth and bokeh in portrait mode if you're taking a selfie, but they can also be used to use depth data to unlock with your face as well. And HTC says it's quite quick. We haven't tested it out, this isn't final software, but the fact that it's on there is nice, and hopefully it'll work well enough to be an impressive feature. Now if we jump around the back, we have dual cameras on both. HTC introduced dual cameras to its flagship phones with the Note 8, which arrived at the end of last year, 2017. But this is the first time an S device has had a dual camera. So the S9 doesn't, but the S9 Plus does. You have dual 12 megapixel sensors, the main sensor of which has a mechanical aperture, so you can jump from, I think it's f1.5 to f2.4. Great for low light performance, really, really wide aperture there. You also get optical image stabilization. There's also the fingerprint sensor, which is now centrally justified under that camera module, which is really good. You can of course take depth data too, and you can use that for live focus, which gives you background blur. Check out our camera review for that and samples of those. You have a single LED flash, and then you have a heart rate sensor there for Samsung Health if you want to measure your heart rate. This phone can also shoot 960 FPS burst super slow motion, which is really impressive stuff. And that is a feature that is not available on the U12 Plus. Instead, what you get is you get a 12 megapixel Ultra Pixel 6, I believe it is, sensor with 1.4 micron pixels, so good low light performance. I think it's an f1.75 aperture. Then there's a 16 megapixel secondary sensor that gives you, just like on the S9 Plus, 2 times optical zoom, and then you get improved digital zoom as well, up to 10 times. They again have got a centrally positioned fingerprint sensor, which they've moved around to the back. If you look at the standard U11 where it's beneath the display, it's now on the back here as well, like it was on the U11 Plus, and that makes a lot of sense. You have a dual LED flash, and then you again have a laser autofocus array, which improves autofocus in low light. This phone does use PDAF and dual pixel PDAF like you get on the U11, the U11 Plus, and the Google Pixel 2 family, for example. This phone does also feature dual pixel, but the laser, HTC says, will improve low light recording. Now I mentioned the slow motion recording here. This phone can shoot up to 4K at 60 FPS with optical image stabilization and electronic image stabilization, which is really impressive. But you can also shoot full HD at up to 240 FPS slow motion, because HTC wanted to focus on giving you longer slow motion recording times with audio, something you don't get when you use burst mode on the S9 Plus's 960 FPS super slow motion. But you do also get slower, or faster I should say, slow motion recording at lower frame rates. If you do want to get some kind of longer slow motion time, it's just not as impressive, I guess you could say, but it does include audio there too, so it's a slightly different experience depending on what you're looking for here. I can't remember if I've said both phones are IP68 certified, the big difference being that the S9 Plus does feature a headphone jack, whereas the U12 Plus does not. HTC has kind of ditched the headphone jack on most of its flagship phones, or all of its flagship phones since the U11, I think it was maybe one of the first, or the 10 Evo actually, ditched the headphone jack. So you get USB-C headphones in box, which feature active noise cancellation. They are the company ViewSonic headphones that own in-ear buds. They give you audio tuning, so you can actually tailor the audio experience to your hearing and your ears, which is good. HTC does include tuned AKG buds in box, I believe, with the S9 and S9 Plus. So you do get some improved audio quality from the headphones out the gate, even though they're not the most advanced headphones in the world. But having that 3.5mm jack is really appreciated, and all the more impressive considering this phone retains the IP68 water resistance that you also get on the U12 Plus. So let's jump into some other features here. We talked about the camera, we talked about edge sense, we talked about the software experience. So on the inside, in the US and certain other markets, this phone runs a Qualcomm Snapdragon 845, the latest flagship chipset from Qualcomm. In the European, I believe it's rocking a 9810, Exynos 9810, which is Samsung's own chipset, backed up by 6GB of RAM. That's very similar to what we're working with here in the U12 Plus. The U12 features the Snapdragon 845 in all markets, I believe it is, backed up by 6GB of RAM in all markets. The main difference being storage. So the S9 Plus features, I believe it's 128GB of internal space by default, with microSD expandability up to 2TB if I'm not mistaken, whilst the U12 Plus features 64GB of internal storage with microSD expandability up to 2TB as well, excuse me. The last thing I think I need to check is battery capacity. So we have a 3,500 mAh cell in the U12 Plus, so it's actually smaller than the one found on the U11 Plus from earlier this year, which was near enough to 4,000 mAh, and instead you get Quick Charge 4.0 support via that USB-C connection, even though there's only a Quick Charge 3.0 charger in box. The same is true of the S9 Plus. This phone also features a 3,500 mAh cell with the company's own fast charge tech, but it does also support wireless charging and fast wireless charging, which you simply don't get on the HTC. So if you want wireless, which I use all the time, I have an iPhone 10 and an S9 Plus, and I love wireless. I think it's extremely convenient. So that feature is not available to you on HTC yet, which is a bit of a bummer. But nonetheless, you still get that super fast quick charge tech with the U12 Plus if you do want to use it. Now that's everything I can think of out the gate. The S9 Plus, excuse me, is already available to buy right now. You can pick it up for, I think it's around £870 SIM-free if you buy it from most retailers, but you might be able to find it cheaper elsewhere. It has obviously been out for longer, but the performance should be very, very similar and very competitive with the new U12 Plus, which will launch in the UK at £699 when it does eventually hit market, which is a pretty solid price point. It undercuts the phones like the S9 Plus without losing out on any major functionality, and the camera promises to be really, really impressive. So we're looking forward to testing this out in full. If you have any questions